Hello, my name is Eric, and today we're going to query information from a Polo database in Rust, and we're going to deploy it in a web app via the Actix framework straight to AWS Apprunner. So let's just jump into it. So let's talk about prerequisites pretty quickly. Besides adding the PoloDB core, if you're going to end up creating a Docker image for yourself, then you would need Docker, and if you also want to go the AWS route and deploy something to Apprunner, then you would need to add these following permissions to your user or to a given role if you're using AWS Cloud 9. If you are using Lambda, then make sure you add the permission called Lambda full access. And then with that, you should be all set to go. Now, I opted for PoloDB because I wanted to use specifically a NoSQL option for this type of query. And what we're querying today is just games themselves, like game sales data regarding best-selling video games. So for example, I got them from this repository on Kaggle. So here they have a CSV. Let me see if I could show it to you. Yeah, they have a CSV here. They have the titles and they have the platforms and the years, and here at the end they have all the sales. So I thought to myself, what would be a pretty cool way to work with this, given that you can't really just stick this thing's download link. Like you would have to go through the Kaggle API, and I thought I might make use of AWS S3 buckets. So I ended up downloading the CSV and putting it up on the bucket. And then when you upload it, I made a bucket called VGXO, and then I uploaded the CSV. When you upload it, you use make public using ACL. You say make public. And when you do, the cool part is that when you go back, this link is exposed. And if you click it, it downloads. So it was really easy for me to just straight up grab it from there and be able to work with it. So let's just jump into the logic really quickly. So I split this project into two pieces. I wanted one Rust project to make the database. So here you can see that the the database file is made here and it accepts a collection of documents, and then as it parses out the CSV from the link right here, the exposed link, it just sends up one record at a time. In fact, I actually can show you like what was the test, what did the test look like. Should have a make database, have a make command that does that. Takes a second to run. And basically it created the database that you see here on the side, VG test PoloDB. So this is the output for like a query called Final Fantasy VII, and then you see that you see information regarding the game here. And then once that database was all set and ready to go, I downloaded it again, and I wanted to try to work with the same concept of uploading it and then working from it by having it on S3. So that was a big send, just a really big win. Same thing as before, we made it public, and after that we were all set for the next step. So now let's just jump in straight into making a Docker image for the app. So the second part of the project was being able to have in another Rust folder the ability to actually query the game. So then you can see like a welcome message, and then the handler for the find game function, and then after that is just normal Actix stuff to be able to bind it to a port and then have it and be able to expose it out. Yeah, so let's just jump into it. Let's make the image. Have a command called make local docker run. So as you can see, it's making the image. And while that's running, we're going to do curl local host I'll come back when it's finished setting up. So now the image has been built. Now that it's running interactively, so let's do a quick curl. And then you can see the contents of the message, and then as defined by the handler. I think I have it as fine game. Let's do, I have a typo there. Let's do Tetris. There's the information on Tetris. Now let's go quickly into the AWS side of things. So I always like to walk through some of these steps for the sake of the video. I don't want to take too much of your time, but basically when you create um, the Elastic Container Registry is just great for sending in Docker images, and then Apprunner grabs it from there and exposes a link for your microservice out there into the world. So here you can write your you can keep it as a private repository or public one. I recommend a private one. Here you could just write the name of whatever you have going on, and then you just create the repository. Let me show you how mine came out. In private registry, you can see, let me go back one step further. You can see mine here, BG search AWS. So that was a Docker image that was created via AWS. And then it deployed it with these push commands right here, which I will show in a second. And then once that's pushed, the Elastic container then keeps track of all the images and it tags them with the latest tag. And let me just check on this. Make deploy AWS from root. Let me show you the commands that are there. Here it is. So these are the same commands that you just saw, and they're just running one after the other in succession. Now, for it to work, you have to, I'm using the permissions from I downloaded and installed the AWS CLI and user permissions and the keys from the user that I mentioned, one of the prerequisites that I mentioned earlier from the user that I made with those policies. And yeah, so I'll come back when this is done running. Awesome. Took a couple of minutes, but here it is. So once it's done, it finishes building the Docker image. You can see that like, oh, it'll save your password to the Docker environment. And then it says login succeeded. It pushes the image and it checks if any changes happened with the general code base. And so I have actually, let me go into that for a second. So just for anybody who may not know, when you're creating an app runner, you can say, oh, like get it from a container registry from your own ECR registry. And then container images stored in the private ECR, that'll be the private registry. Remember how you made the private ECR? Same thing here. It's going to be private. So then when you browse through it, you can actually find it. So mine is this one, and it always grabs the latest tag. You can either make it manual or automatic. Cool thing about automatic is that anytime the image that you pushed to the container registry changes, Apprunner automatically updates with that new image. And then for the service role, you use Apprunner ECR service role. And then hot tip here, if you ever run into any trouble, you can always up the number of CPUs and the number of virtual memory, and make sure that the port matches correctly. And then for the health checks, you can play around with the timing here so that your service isn't classified as dead way too quickly. So to wrap up the video, since I already redeployed the image along for this demo video, let me see if see, it's updating. It's currently updating, so I'll come back when it's done. Yep, now I've finished. Definitely took its sweet time in that sense. But yeah, now that one last thing I want to highlight is if you're ever making the service, the app runner service, after you've done your health checks, you press next, so on and so forth. And it does take a while to deploy. Just make sure to keep an eye on those service logs that are like the ones that you see here. All right, so now the service is honestly ready to go. This is the welcome page, and it says like, hey, if you want to try something, well, do find game and maybe like try Tetris. And you can see like that's the information of the game right there. Let's try another one. Let's try one of my favorite ones. I have the link saved here. Dragon Ball Xenoverse. Um, to the creator of Dragon Ball, rest in peace, because passed away recently, but lots of great childhood memories. Anyways, thanks for watching this video. Appreciate it.